don't eat at other people's house no more. Me and my best friend, we were like 11 or 12 at the time, and we were having a sleepover at her house. We had hung out outside of school many times before. This would just be the first time I went over to her house. My mom drops me off and just lets me walk inside. When I went up to the door, my best friend answered and she was like, "Hey, can you grab a shoe?" Immediately I could tell that the house wasn't very clean, but I knew it wasn't her fault. It's not because she asked me to grab a shoe. I could see behind her and could tell that the house was just really messy. It really did look like an episode of Hoarders, but I grabbed a shoe and I helped her look for that fly. So it was me, my bestie, and her grandma looking for bug. We got a little tired, so we sat down to eat something and her grandma made us a snack. I was a little scared to eat, not gonna lie, but I didn't want to make my best friend feel bad, so I went ahead and ate my food. Well, I was only able to eat some of it because we had left the basement door open and we saw the bug fly down there. So we stopped eating, ran down to the basement, and we saw the bug fly behind this box. We moved this box, and I swear 100 families of spiders and their ancestors started spewing out, like for part 2. This is gonna be part 2 of why I don't eat at other people's house no more. Like I said, so many spiders started spewing out from behind this box. I genuinely thought that these spiders were going to eat all of us alive. It was not a fun situation. We did not run fast enough. These spiders started crawling all over us. I think I saw a lighter somewhere and considered setting myself on fire. I don't want you guys to imagine like my whole entire body covered up with spiders. That's what it felt like, but there was only like 5 or 6 on me. The grandma gets a blanket and starts whipping us with it. She's like trying to dust the spiders off. I see my best friend start stripping. I was a little about that, but I would do anything to get these spiders off. Once we felt like we were good, we ran upstairs. My best friend started crying to me and apologizing and saying how much she hates her life and how she's so embarrassed. But I told her that all is good and this doesn't change the way that I see her at all. We have our little moment and then we sit down to eat again. And you know, I'm going in on my little SpaghettiOs, but all of a sudden it starts getting crunchy. I ignore it and I get down to the bottom of the bowl. When I look down, there is a half-eaten spider in the bottom of the bowl, like for part 2. This is gonna be part 3 of why I don't eat at other people's house anymore. So like I said, I was munching and grunching on some SpaghettiOs. It's getting crunchy and I'm like, what's this crunch? Where's all this crunch coming from? I was like, bruh, it's probably some expired SpaghettiOs, but let me finish this bowl so my friend don't feel bad. When I got to the end and there was only some soup left, I saw a half-eaten spider, the same spiders that we had seen downstairs. My body, it started vibrating. I was shaking. I seized out. I think I passed out. This was not a good situation. I did have a phobia of spiders. I told my best friend, listen, babes, I love you. You know I love you. But this cannot go on no longer. I'm gonna have to go home. I felt like such a terrible friend, but I did call my mom and she came to get me and she took me home. I told her what happened and she was upset with my friend's grandma. From then on, we only had sleepovers at my house. And ever since my family found out about her living situation, we would go over there sometimes to help them clean. We would bring food and games. I'm grown now, but me and this girl ended up falling out because of some drama. This is gonna be a story time of how I almost drowned someone's baby. Y'all, I cannot sleep at night because of this. I cannot believe that I did this to someone's child. Now, let me go ahead and explain myself. So I was babysitting for this one rich family. What's so amazing about it was the fact that the parents were never home. At the same time, I was just a senior in high school. I didn't have much to do after school either. I didn't have hobbies. I didn't play a sport. So I had all the time in the world to babysit for their kid and house sit for them. This baby was only 1 year old. Since the baby was so young, I had to keep eyes on it at all times. They had this big pool area and they said that if I ever wanted to go swimming, I could, and there was a floaty for the baby. One day while I was house sitting and babysitting for them, I went in the pool and I put the baby on the floaty thing. Somehow I forgot that that baby existed. I felt something in the bottom of my feet at the pool. It was like slippery, so I kicked it out the way because I thought it was a toy. And then when I turn around me, I see that the baby is not on the floaty. I look down and I see this tiny human sunk in the water, like for part 2. This is part 2 of how I almost drowned someone's baby. When this was happening, I was on my phone, so I was distracted. I looked down in the pool and I see that the baby is drowning. I don't really know how to explain the way that my heart skipped a beat at this exact moment. Like my heart was beating regularly and then all of a sudden it skipped 2 beats at a time. My ass was in my forehead. Immediately dived down into the pool, took out the baby, but the baby was suffocating. Now listen, I never did CPR, but God blessed me with those skills in that very moment. I was able to keep myself calm and did CPR on the baby and was able to get it to breathe again. I did not tell nobody shit about this. I didn't tell the parents. The baby is fine. I really should have told the parents because what if it did cause a health issue? But from what I've seen, the baby's fine. Yeah, I didn't tell them what happened, but I quit babysitting because I felt guilty. They haven't said anything about their baby dysfunctioning, so the baby is fine. Just because of this, I pulled myself out of babysitting and I'll never babysit ever again because I'm clearly not responsible enough. Here's another babysitting horror story. and how my babysitter almost killed me and my baby sister. So it first started when my parents hired a babysitter for us. At first she was really sweet, and then she started being really mean out of nowhere. She started hitting us when we would cry, and she would blow cigarette smoke in our face. One time when she was driving us home from the grocery store, my baby sister was crying really hard the whole entire car ride. When we got home, she got me out of the car and brought in the groceries, but she left my 2-year-old sister in the car. It was 103 degrees, and she left her in there. That's honestly when I first started becoming scared of her. But why I became terrified of her is because one time my parents went on vacation for like a week, and one night my babysitter ordered pizza. My parents sent the babysitter the money for it. It was for all of us, but she wanted to get anchovies on the pizza. I told her I didn't really want that, but she ordered it anyway. When the pizza came, I didn't really want to eat it. Instead of her being like, well, I'll just make you something else, she locked me into a room for 3 days. She would only let me out to use the bathroom, but I wasn't allowed to eat anything. After that, she made starving us a regular thing. Then my parents came back and took us to the hospital for a checkup, like for part 2. This is part 2 of my babysitting horror story. So like I said, my parents came back from vacation and took us to the hospital for a checkup. They took us to the hospital because they noticed we were getting really skinny. When we got to the hospital, the doctor said my 2-year-old baby sister only weighed 19 to 20 pounds. And I was 13 at the time, I only weighed 90 pounds. The look on my mom and dad's face was enough. So when we got back into the car, I finally told them about what the babysitter had been doing. Now hold on tight, because the way my mama reacted to this, you would have thought somebody possessed her. Immediately, my mom started going off on my dad, like yelling and screaming at him. And he just had his hands in his face. I was so confused as to what was going on. See, I didn't know my dad when I was younger. He passed away before I was born. And so I found out that my current dad at the time wasn't my real dad. And I didn't know the truth until this whole babysitting situation. She babysat me for like a month, and then my parents fired her. I'm 23 now. I honestly could have forgotten all about her. Well, just last year, my mom told me that that babysitter was my dad's ex-wife. Well, anyways, this is what my mom did to my stepdad's ex-wife after we went to the hospital. This is part 3 of my babysitting horror story. So like I said, I finally told my parents about what the babysitter had been doing to me and my baby sister. I was so confused as to why my mom started going off on my dad right away after I told her. But 10 years later, I'm finally finding out that my babysitter was my stepdad's ex-wife. My mom told me that she had been really iffy about letting my stepdad's ex-wife babysit me and my little sister, but she only agreed with it to save money. So my mom told my dad to get out of the driver's seat. She got into the driver's seat and she started driving. I wasn't exactly sure where we were going, and my dad didn't know either, but we ended up at the babysitter's house. Luckily for her, she wasn't home, because my mom would have dropped her. Shit, she might have even got a murder charge that day. But my mom told me to get a rock and to just start chucking them at her windows. So that's what I did. There, me and my mom were chucking rocks at my babysitter's window, and my dad was watching us holding my baby sister. My mom didn't take her to court or anything. I'm not exactly sure why, probably something to do with my dad, but my mom made my dad cut contact with her completely, and they fired her.
This is why you should choose your friends wisely. I work at a hotel, and around 3 p.m. this guest came to check into her prepaid reservation. Despite it being prepaid, we have a $300 security deposit that's mandatory. Her card was declining for the deposit, so we couldn't check her in. She left around 4 p.m. and came back at 11 p.m. with her friend. Her friend spent $100 on an Uber to come to our hotel and put his card down for the deposit so that she could check in. Then he had to Uber back and spend another $100. The next morning, she brought me down a piece of paper filled top to bottom with her demands. She wanted her entire stay comped, additional nights comped in the future, and she wanted free room service. Her reasoning? We didn't let her check in due to her card being declined. We had a back and forth conversation about how I couldn't give her any of those things because her card declined. She kept saying things like, so you're basically blaming me for everything, and how she was a movie producer from London who was traveling, which is why her card declined. When she realized that I wasn't budging, she left the front desk. Luckily, that day was her checkout date, so we wouldn't have to deal with her for much longer. Or so I thought. She called a little later and asked for a late checkout. I told her I couldn't offer that to her because every room was booked up. She got mad and hung up on me. Around 11 a.m., security informed me that a guest was outside bothering the other guests. Part 2, why you should choose your friends wisely. While I'm walking over, a few hotel guests tell me that a crazy lady is bothering them. As I walk up to her, she's sitting with 2 random guests. I asked the gentleman if they're okay. They said, it's fine, we're okay. Which is when the lady tells me, the only person bothering them is you. I ignore her and double check with the other guests who confirm that they're okay. That's when she says, bye, you can go now. To which I replied, remember, checkout is at 12. Oh, and if another guest complains about you bothering them, you'll be kicked out of the pool. Eventually, 12 p.m. checkout time hits. I send security to her room first as part of the do-outs. They inform me that her bags are all over the room, but she's not there. We smell cigarettes in her room, and after an inspection, find out that she's been extensively smoking in the room. That's a $500 fee. I authorize the $500 on her friend's card since it's the only one that we have on file. 1 p.m. hits, then 2, and finally she arrives at 6 p.m. I post a $300 checkout fee to her room as well, along with a resort fee totaling $850. When she came back, we told her we couldn't release her things until the cardholder signs authorization for the charges. This is when she throws a huge tantrum and leaves. However, it doesn't end there. Part 3, why you should choose your friends wisely. The next day, I get a call from the crazy lady's friend asking why he's being charged $850. I tell him everything and he's in shock. He said that she's having a midlife crisis right now and her mental state isn't normal at the moment. He then said the $850 charge is outrageous, followed by not knowing what he signed up for when he put his card down. I told him that putting his card down for her was essentially him taking responsibility for her reservation. I explained that I feel bad about it, but charging his card wasn't my decision. I also said that since we couldn't release her items to her, her bags are still in the room. Also, that the card on file will continue to be charged for each day the bags remain in the room. We'll only move the bags out of the room once we get an authorization form signed for the charges. He said he'd gladly pay the $350 for the late checkout, but the $500 smoking fee was too much. He threatened to open a dispute with his bank if he's charged for the full $850. I spoke to my general manager and the most we could do was offer him 50% off of the smoking fee. I also let him know that if he tried to dispute the charges, the hotel would pursue payment in court. He ended up accepting and signing for the charges. We took her bags out of the room and the crazy lady came to pick them up at 3 in the morning. Overall, I just felt really bad for her friend.